So today we're gonna talk about installation of Windows 10. Also discuss the upgrades, the different options of installing, and also we're going to talk about virtualization. So hopefully virtualization is not new for all of you. Some of you would have used virtualization already, I know that, but some of you is going to be brand new. Who's never heard of virtualization before in their life? You're just one person? That's okay. So today's objective is to discuss what is virtualization, discuss the difference between host and guest operating systems, the different types of virtualization, bare metal versus hosted, look at VMware Tools, and give you an overview of Windows 10 and the way we can deploy it, and then we'll actually install Windows 10 within as a virtual machine within VMware Workstation. So what is virtualization? So basically, in this day and age, we have physical computers that you can touch. So the ones in front of you are physical computers. And most of you would have a laptop or computer at home, no problems at all. But what virtualization is actually to create that the hardware within software. Okay, what does that mean? That means in the computer, you have a CPU, you have RAM, you have hard drive, you have network cards. That's on a physical computer. What we do is we use a software like a VMware Workstation or another hypervisor, and we define the virtual hardware within that software. So it's where one or more virtual computers operating on the same at the same time on the one physical computer. So if you look at this diagram, you got one physical computers, and in this diagram, there's six virtual machines. You know what? If you continue to study networking or something in the networking field, you will be virtualizing 6 virtual machines at some stages, all at the same time. So what is virtualization? In computing, it's the creation of a virtual rather than actual version of something, such as a hardware platform, operating system, storage device, or network resource. Normally, if you have one physical computer, you run one operating system at any one time. That's normal computers, right? You have one computer, one OS on there. This leaves the physical machine very underutilized. So for example, if I look at my computer right now, and my computer in front of us right now, and if I look at the performance, you can see that as far as the disk activity goes, not much happening. If we look at the Ethernet, don't look, that's probably a bad example because right now I'm actually transferring a whole heap of files to my computer in the form of virtual machines. If we look at our memory, you can see that I've got 16 gigs of RAM, but I'm actually using only that much, probably 4 gigs, about 4 gigs. And if you look at my CPU, if we're talking about percentages, right now it's about 25%, about quarter of the capacity. What does that mean? That means we got all this capacity, but we're really only using them this much. What happens to all of this most of the time? Most of the time, you think about your computer. Unless you're doing something super intensive at that time, most of the time your computer's on. You're really wasting all that resources, aren't you? So why do we have virtualization? Because we got all that resources being wasted or not being utilized. We create virtual machines to use up some of that slack, and so it allows us to do many things with virtualization. You got a question?
Yeah. So if you're running multiple instances, multiple virtual machines,
yep,
and it's using all of those, all the extra space, does
yep,
that mean that the computer's drawing more power?
as in like electricity?
Yeah.
Yeah, electricity, yeah, probably would draw more power if you're using more percentage of your resources. But obviously, there's a reason for that. You're using it to do more work. Okay.
Still less than what you would do.
Yeah.
Two separate machines.
So if one computer 100% utilization is still probably cheaper to run than 4 computers at 25% utilization. Okay, if that's what you're comparing with. But that's not the point, really. There is a point because it's to do with environmental sustainability, and if you're talking about organization, that contributes to the cost. Okay, it makes your company more sustainable environmentally because you're reducing the amount of electricity you are using. Okay, and beyond just the e-waste and all the other equipment that goes along with it. Virtualization allows you to run multiple virtual machines on a single machine or a group of physical machines. So let me see if my transfers happen? Okay, it looks like it has. So what I've got is VMware Workstation. Okay, you guys by the end of the week will have access to your own copy of VMware Workstation to take home. I just have to make sure that by the end of the week, everyone who's enrolled will get an account created for them. So right now, I'm going to open a virtual machine I've just copied down. So I did nothing besides go to my L drive, and I'm going to copy down a virtual machine. So Windows 10 virtual machine. And just while I was talking to you guys, I've copied this virtual machine from the network, and now I'm going to turn it on. You can see it's just like another Windows 10, isn't it? But it's inside this window. Okay, you can see it's running inside that window. I've got my real machine running, and I've got my virtual machine running. So why do we even bother virtualizing? It's because it's actually very, very useful. All right, so if I look at this, if I full screen this, it's just another copy of Windows, isn't it? If I actually even take away this pin, you wouldn't be able to tell if this was my real machine or my virtual machine. And if I actually log in with password 1, it will act and behave just like any other real machine. But the fact is, it's not a real machine, it's a virtual machine, and I can show you if I actually get I'll change the view. I'll show you. It's actually a whole bunch of files. So it was on my C drive, downloads folder. There's the Windows 10. It's all of these files that make up the virtual machine. Okay? And guess what? If I just made a copy of that Windows 10, didn't I? I made a copy of it. And guess what? If I want to make another copy of it, I can just go to my go to these file, copy it. Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we were talking about just before. Remember, your computer normally has a lot of capacity to spare. By stacking these virtual machines on, you're using your spare capacity. Absolutely, because you're not wasting it, because CPU is going to be running regardless of whether you use it or not. But now we're just making it more efficient because we're utilizing it. It's going to use more memory. You can see that I've turned on this virtual machine. It was 4 gigs of memory before. It's gone up, hasn't it? If you look at the CPU, it's still not crazy. But if you look at the C drive, it's actually quite high now because I'm actually doing this copy as well. Okay, I'm making this copy. I'll cancel this because it's actually going to take a while. Here's a Windows 10. I'll show you something else. If I want to actually make another copy of it, I can just use the cloning method, and I'll make a clone, and I'll just store it wherever it says. Now I've got another Windows 10 virtual machine. Did you see that? I just made another virtual machine just in a matter of seconds, didn't I? And it's both going to work like any other Windows 10. What was a practical use? Well, let's give you some examples. Let's say you have a Linux machine, or you have an Apple Macintosh, but we're doing this course on Windows 10. How the hell are you going to do Windows 10 on your Mac? Boot camp? Then that means your whole hard drive is dedicated to that then. All right. Whereas if we just install VMware Fusion on Mac, for example, we can just have 2 virtual machines of Windows 10 running just like that. You can partition, but you're still going to only run it one at a time. Okay. Yeah. So now, guess what? I've got 2, can't I? Don't I? So if I look at this, this is host only. This is host only, I believe. And if I actually make this a little bit bigger, if I can actually find the CMD IP config, this is 192.168.225.128. Can someone remember that for me? 225.128. Remember that. I go over here, password 1, log in. view, fit screen now, and I start up a command prompt, and I'll ping 192.168.225.128. Let me just, I got overly excited. Let me just turn off the firewall, because the firewall is going to stop us communicating with other computers that we don't know of. Yep, so you see, I'm not sure if you understand the idea of the ping packet. The ping packet in networking is basically sending an echo request to see if that other computers are live on the network. And basically, I've got these two computers and I've got one pinged other. That's another use, isn't it? I can actually practice networking now, even though I only got one physical machine. How are you going to do a network if you've got one physical machine? Guess what? I can actually not only do Windows 10, I can do another Linux server, I can do a Windows server, I can do a whole heap of other things and practice things that I don't have. Okay? If I go back to my PowerPoint, so hopefully you'll realize some of these things. So this is only for the classroom use and as a student, as a desktop user. So this is what we call desktop virtualization, because we're doing it on a desktop machine. We've got a hosted virtualization, meaning we've got a physical machine with an operating system already on there. Then we've installed VMware Workstation, and then we've created virtual machines within that. But in an enterprise, in a company, well, it's a little bit different. Instead of having servers with physical servers, 10 of them, because we're going to need 10 different servers, couldn't we just buy 2, 3, 4 physical machines and virtualize all 10 servers on those 2, 3, 4 physical machines? First of all, I'm going to save money on the amount of physical machines I need. And secondly, I'm going to be able to do things like move virtual machines from one physical server to another physical server to avoid downtimes. That's the type of things we can do, because at the end of the day, it's a whole bunch of files. If you wanted to take this virtual machine that I've just created today, we're going to create one today. If you want to take it home and you got a portable hard drive today, you could copy those files to your portable hard drive, take it to your home computer. As long as you got VMware Workstation at home, you can open it, turn it on, and run it and do the rest of your work. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. So you get what I'm saying, how it's very useful. And we've got other functions in there, and we'll go through some of these things later on. But we've got things like snapshots, which is a point-in-time capture. So you'll see that in some of our other worksheets that we'll do. We'll say, go to this snapshot and do this from there. Well, I can guarantee you what kind of environment you're going to be in if you go to the right snapshot. Whereas if it was on a physical machine, well, it depends, doesn't it? If it's on a physical machine, it depends. What did the previous student do to it? Where were they up to? And guess what? If I mess it up, if I do my worksheets and my practice and I mess up my virtual machine and I have one of these snapshots, I can just go back to that snapshot, all good again. And you just saw me do cloning. I need 2 virtual machines. I just cloned it, made another one. I need another one, clone again, make another one. You see how flexible and very agile, as they call it, is? So if we want to sort of visual look at how it works, we've got this hardware. This hardware here. Okay, this represents your physical CPU, your RAM, your network card, your hard disk, and many other physical components of your computer. On the computer in front of us, we've got that. Then we've got Windows 10 installed as a host operating system. That's actually installed directly onto this hardware. Get me? On top of this, we've got programs like this PowerPoint installed, so we can do things. But one of the programs is actually called the virtualization layer, and in our case, it's a VMware Workstation. Within this VMware Workstation, we've created virtual machines. And inside of that, we can install operating system and other applications, and we can have multiple virtual machines running at the same time. Okay? So some more benefits of virtualization. Improves server utilization. Okay, like I said, when you size your computer, when you buy a computer, you don't buy the smallest one you can afford, do you? I bet you every one of you guys go, oh, what computer should I get? You go look at your money. I've got this much. You look at what I can afford with this much, and you buy the maximum capacity specifications you can afford, can't you? Which is good, because you're thinking of that game that you want to play, or that thing you want to do, but you know what? 99.9% of the time, you're not playing that game. So all that capacity goes to waste. But virtualization allows you to use that capacity as other virtual machines. Reduces the number of physical servers you need in an enterprise. Yeah, if we can virtualize, why do we need 10 physical servers when we can host them on 4? Improves security. You can run multiple operating systems on a single computer, including Windows, Linux, and many other different operating systems. Lets your Mac or Linux computer run Windows virtual machines. Allows students to learn about different operating systems like server, like Linux. Reduces the capital cost. Like I said, capital cost is what the enterprise or what the person pays outlays. If you're not buying that 10 physical machines for your servers, you're buying 4, improve in cost, doesn't it? Requires less hardware, less energy, like we mentioned before, more energy efficient, better for the environment. Okay, so for us, what we've got here is what's called hosted virtualization. We've got the hardware, we've got our host operating system, which is that operating system that's installed onto the hardware. Then we've got VMware Workstation, and we have the VMs running on there. That's what we've got. And that's what we refer to as hosted or desktop virtualization. But when you're talking about a company and we're talking about server virtualization, it's really, you got the hardware, then you have a hypervisor. Okay, this is what's referred to as bare metal, meaning you don't need this host operating system anymore. You can install it as part operating system, part hypervisor, and you install it directly to the hardware. So your VMware ESX is one of them. Your Hyper-V, Microsoft, is another one. And then you put your virtual machines on top of that. You can see because you don't have this extra layer here, you're not wasting resources for your host operating system. You're purely using those resources, CPU, memory, etc., on your virtual machines. VMware Tools. So when we create a virtual machine, we can install what's called a VMware tool. So on this virtual machine, for example, you can see I've someone, whoever created this, I just copied it. It was actually me, but whoever can install this VMware tools. That's a little bit of software that's inside the virtual machine. And what it allows you to do is that it allows you to actually go to your downloads. Let's copy that. And go to your virtual machine and let you paste this straight in. Copy and paste between the virtual machine and your physical machine. Allows you to not only do that, but I can actually just open a whole bunch of text and copy that. And in here, go new text document and paste it in. So it allows that exchange of information between your physical machine and your virtual machine very easy. It allows you to move your mouse in and out of the virtual machine quite easily. With virtual machines, there's this idea of focus, because you've got 2 machines, or 2 or 3 machines in this case. Which one are you entering the keystrokes on, right? If I press Control Delete, which computer am I doing it on? So the idea of focus is that if you want to work with this Windows 10 virtual machine, I had to click in. Then anything I do, like pressing the Windows key, is going to happen inside that virtual machine. Whereas if I actually press Control Alt, I release my mouse inside my real computer. You know, if I press the Windows key, it happens on my real computer. So that idea of focus. With VMware Tools in there, I don't have to press Control Alt to release it. I just have to move my mouse around. When it's in here clicked, it's on the virtual machine. When I move it out, I don't even have to click. It's back on my real machine. Okay. So that's what VMware Tools does. It actually also lets me synchronize the size of my screen. You notice that right at the start, it was all over the place. So I can change the view. I can put it as auto size, auto fit guest. And what does that mean? That means if I adjust this smaller or bigger, you can see that my whole of my desktop fits in that little window, doesn't it? If I close this up, all of my window fits into that. I make it bigger. It's just readjusted the whole screen to the same size. You might notice that the time here and the time on my real machine is identical. That's something else it does. It synchronizes time. and there's many other things it does as well. Let's keep on going through. So here's some of those things we were just talking about. So VMware Tools includes some features you don't see. VMware Tools device drivers improves graphical, network, and mouse performance, efficient memory allocation between virtual machines, and kernel module for handling shared folders. So VMware Tools user process, it match screen resolution like I showed you. It allows you to grab and release the mouse easily. It copies and pastes files and text. It can go into Unity mode if you wanted to, and we'll talk about Unity a little bit later. So that's just the intro to virtualization, okay? So we'll do more of that, but we're going to get into Windows 10 specifically now. So with Windows 10, so this is what the main topic of this subject is, Windows 10. So Windows 10, as you know, is the operating system from Microsoft. Microsoft says it's the last operating system you'll ever see for the desktop from them. What does that mean? It means that instead of actually giving you a new one every so many years, they're just going to update this one. Okay, so if you look at, let me see, on this one, this is a fairly old virtual machine. If I type a WinVer, WinVer, it stands for Windows version. It can tell you that this is actually the very first build, Windows 10, 240. So it's a virtual machine that we created ages ago. Okay. If I actually go on my real machine and type WinVer, this is quite old too, but you can see that this is actually 1809. So what does that mean? That means actually this is the release. So every year, your Microsoft is going to release 4 versions, pretty much one every quarter. It's got all the updates. And what does this mean? This means that this is 2018 September release. On your computer at home, you might have remembered that late last year you went through a big giant update. Anyone remember that? It took ages for it to update, and you probably got to the 19 something or other update. So that's why it's called, they say it's the last version, because instead of giving you a brand new one altogether, every time you do one of those major updates, it's almost like it's upgrading your operating system to that latest version. You get new features, fixes, and capabilities. So here are some different additions. And to be honest, there's a few that we need to know of, and a few that we probably only specific situations we need to have. So there's the Windows 10 Home, which all of us probably would have one at home. And as the name suggests, it's for the home user, individual. It's not meant to be in a domain or Windows network. It's available to everyone. There's Windows 10 Pro, Professional. This is more for organization. So this is meant to be in a network, into a Windows network called a domain. Okay? You cannot join a Windows 10 Home to a domain, but you can with Windows 10 Pro or Enterprise. This is really for everyone, but the Enterprise is, as the name suggests, is for large enterprises, and this one is only available with volume licensing. What does that mean? It means instead of getting individual serial numbers, you get one, which is for 250, let's say, and then you install 250 of it on your premises. There's this large enterprise. Again, this is for the very large ones. Again, volume licensing. There's education, which is really for schools, staff, and students, only available through academic volume license. There's the Windows 10 Mobile, which is actually for your mobile devices, tablets, smartphones, etc. And there's the Windows 10 Mobile Enterprise, which is for business consumers, smartphones, and tablets, which is for a company. Okay, a bit like this is Windows 10 Home for your mobile, and this is more like your Windows 10 Enterprise for your mobile devices. One's meant to be controlled by organization, one's meant to be individual standalone. Then there's a couple of other things. There's a Windows 10 IoT. You might have heard of that term, Internet of Things, really for smart devices. Okay, so you can see where they're going. They're going to give you the same platform for all their devices. Phones, desktops, laptops, tablets, smart home innovations. You see how they're going. It's a bit like they want to dominate the world. Yep. What do you mean server specific? Like there's a server 2019. Oh well, yeah. Windows 2012 server 2012 is really XP server. Okay, so server 2016 is really Windows 10 server. Okay, and 19 is probably the latest Windows 10 server, if you like to think of it like that. All right, so then we've got this Internet of Things, which is all about your smart devices. Like, you could have a, automated parking sensor. You've probably seen those, where it senses how long you parked there, gives you a fine, takes your photo if you stay too long, or at least report back to people. That's one example, but there's this version as well. But let's look at some of the requirements. None of these are crazy amount of hard drive disk space or CPU or memory or anything like that. And I would guess to say that every one of us will have a computer that's capable of this. Okay, so obviously it has to have some sort of minimum, otherwise people will try to install onto their 486DX2 or something like that, which they can't. So 64-bit, first of all, it's 64-bit. You understand the term 64-bit? Okay, so hardware used to be 32-bit, means it can process 32 bits of information. A bit is a 1 or 0. So 32-bit means it can process 32 bits of information any CPU cycle. 64-bit means it can process 64 bits of information, so it's a lot faster. Okay? They can't sort of coexist. You can't put a 64-bit operating system onto a 30-bit hardware. But you can put a 32-bit operating system on a 64-bit hardware. So you need 64-bit, you need 16 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs of hard drive space, 1 gig of RAM, 1 gigahertz of CPU, graphics card, display 800 by 600, nothing crazy. Okay. Determining the requirements for specific Windows features. So, like all these things are for just getting Windows on. But what if you want to use Windows for this and for that and use this feature or that feature? It depends. Feature-specific requirements include the Windows Hello requirement requires biometric hardware. So you know how on your phone you probably could have facial recognition or thumbprints to unlock it? Well, you can do that on your Windows 10, but only if you have biometric hardware. You can't expect it to work without the hardware, okay? You have the secure boot requires firmware that supports UEFI. UEFI firmware, okay, that's just a new way of firmware. BitLocker, so if you want to use BitLocker you need a TPM, a trusted platform module that locks your whole computer so no one can get in. It's encrypted, that if you lose your computer or laptop, they can't actually see what's on it. So you need a BitLocker, requires TPM or a USB flash drive. Client Hyper-V requires 64-bit system. So remember how I said Hyper-V was a virtualization tool? Well, it's actually part of your Windows 10. So if I start the control panel, so hopefully you guys know what control panel is, but if I go to programs and features, and we go to Windows feature, you can see that Hyper-V is part of the Windows 10. It's not the full Hyper-V you find on servers, it's a cut down version. Okay, but key point, do not install Hyper-V while you're a student here at TAFE, because there's coexistence issues with VMware Workstation and Hyper-V. You can't have both on the same physical computer, if you like. And because we use VMware Workstation, do not put Hyper-V on your home computer. Put the VMware Workstation you're going to get from us, okay? So Hyper-V, yeah, because we believe the VMware Workstation is a better tool. Okay, it does things easier, and we think it's better. Not to say that's what the whole industry says, but that's what we say. Okay, determine application compatibility. So obviously, before you switch to Windows 10, you've got to know what are you switching from. Is it still going to work on your new system? Okay, some things will, some things won't. So some of these, if it's incompatible, sometimes you'll see some of these things happening. An application fails to run. You get error messages. You have missing application functionality, so some things don't work, and you might have data loss or corruption. So migrating application compatibility involves the following steps. You need to discover, rationalize, prioritize, test, and migrate. So what we're saying is that you never just bang do it, upgrade to Windows 10, and that's it. You got to, you got to make sure you actually go through this process and work out if there's any problems before you take that next step. Question? Mitigate. Sorry, mitigate, to make less. Okay, so the mitigate means make less. If there's a problem, you either remove the problem by solving it, or you reduce the impact of the problem by mitigating it. Determining application compatibility. So there's an ACT. Use ACT to test and verify applications. So build a test workstation running Windows 10 that has all the required apps installed. The key thing is, does it work? All right, easy enough, isn't it? You don't switch a whole network over to Windows 10 if you haven't already tested yet. Because when you're testing it, you'll realize if there's going to be potential problems. If there's going to be potential problems, don't do the rest of the computers. Work out a fix before you go ahead with it. Run the apps to see if there's any issues or functionality or behavior. Install ACT on a workstation. Open the compatibility administrator and run any problematic apps within it. Create a custom database to hold the test information. Create an application fix. If required, save the fix to a distribution location or media and distribute this fix to your organization. What does that mean? A fix could be in the form of a registry patch. It could be in the form of an upgrade or a patch of your operating system. It could be that you can turn off this setting or turn on that setting. So that's what it's talking about. So installing Windows 10. I'm sure everyone here has installed a operating system before, and you'll do it today. Okay, you do it today from a DVD ISO, but there's a couple of other ways you can do it as well. So you can the way we're going to do it is this in green, high touch with retail media deployment. Insert the DVD and turn it on and walk through the steps. Wizard. It's high touch because you're making every decision. You're clicking next, you're clicking accept, you're making the choices. That's what it means, high touch. You're touching it quite a lot. Okay? Low touch deployment uses MDT with Windows Deployment Services to automate most of the deployment, including applications, device drivers, and updates. And we'll talk more about this in a future subject called for SCCM. Okay, that's System Center Configuration Manager. And we'll talk about how we can deploy operating systems across the network with zero administrator intervention besides turning the physical machine on. There's zero touch, as in you don't touch it at all. Use the MTD and Configuration Manager, like I just mentioned, to deliver a fully automated deployment process. Or you can provision packages, create packages with ICD, and deploy the settings, apps, and files instead of re-imaging. So you can do all of this. You can be as simple as inserting a DVD, turning it on, USB stick, turning it on. It could be as complicated as using System Center Configuration Manager. But don't forget, it's almost like this bang for your buck type situation. If I have one computer, maybe it's a lot easier to do the manual installation because it's just one computer, isn't it? No problems. Half an hour later, I've got an operating system. What if you had 2,000 computers? If you had to do it one at a time, 2,000 times, that's a lot of effort, isn't it? Okay, so maybe if that's the case, I might use one of these other alternatives. What if it's something that happens all the time? Like here at TAFE, we have to, every term, every semester, we have to wipe these computers clean and re-image it or reinstall everything, in other words. I wouldn't want to be the person doing that every time. So maybe one of these other systems like re-imaging is where we go. There's also Windows to Go. So basically, you instead of installing on your hard drive inside of your computer, you install it onto a USB stick that's plugged into your computer. So what does that mean? It means I can take that USB, as long as it's installed as a Windows to Go, take it to another computer, plug it in, tell it to boot from that USB stick, and then I'll have my own Windows 10 running on that hardware. Before you use Windows to Go, you must create a bootable USB drive with the Windows to Go workspace in one or two ways. Manually create the Windows to Go USB drive from a computer running Windows 10 Enterprise, or use Configuration Manager to provision a Windows to Go. So Configuration Manager is that system set configuration manager I was talking about. So here's an example how to create Windows to Go. This is the USB device. On your Windows 10 Enterprise, you can say, I'm going to create a Windows to Go here. Next, go through the wizard, and then you have a version of the operating system with your USB stick. Deployment using provisioning. Okay, so you can use Windows ICD to view all the configurable settings, policies, and for Windows 10 image or provision package. You can create a Windows provisioning answer file, add non-Microsoft drivers, apps, and other assets to the answer file, create variants and specify the settings that apply to each variant, and build and flash a Windows image, build a provisioning package. So what does that mean? That means if I'm doing all of this, and especially with the answer files, I'm pre-answering or configuring all the requirements that's required during the installation. That means if I do it once and save it like this, I can keep it here and use it over and over again on all these computers on the network to do it in a bulk deployment. Yep.
Sorry, what's the difference between deployment using provisioning and just having an ISO?
Oh well, the ISO image is just the installation files. Okay. So provisioning the package means that you have the answer files as well as other applications and settings as part of this deployment. Yeah, it's exactly right. It's like, for example, if I want this computer with VMware Workstation on it, with Microsoft Office on it, Chrome browser on it, that's not going to be part of the ISO, the Windows 10 ISO, is it? It's going to be all these additional packages that I put together as my own custom package, as you said. Okay. So if we want a diagrammatic method, you can do as simple as a installation media, ISO or USB stick with an answer file, and you plug it in, turn it on with the answer file, you walk away, you come back, and it's installed. Or we can actually use our system to actually create an example computer, use this sysprep, and we'll be talking about the sysprep in a big way later. Generalize this computer, we capture an image, and then we take this image and use it 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 times across the network to deploy all those computers. It's all about efficiency. Okay, a good network administrator is a lazy network administrator, meaning that they get their job done with the littlest effort overall. Okay, so if you do this, if you do manual installation, that might be quick and easy if you have one computer, like I said, but it's not going to be quick and easy if you have 10,000 computers. Okay, so you wouldn't want to have that job. All right, what about upgrades? Okay, so this is a part of the subject. It's all about upgrades. So how can we upgrade to Windows 10? Well, really, we can upgrade from 8. Okay, Windows 8. We can upgrade from Windows 7 SP1 RTM. There's a direct upgrade. You can see there's a direct upgrade, means you can upgrade directly from them. And anything else besides the ones that are listed with direct upgrade, you cannot. Okay. So, well, anything else other than these ones mentioned, it's probably too old anyway. But the Windows update, so if you have Windows 8.1, you can upgrade to Windows 10 and or do it with an update. With all of these other ones, you cannot do that. So you got to understand that also some features may be removed if you upgrade from wherever it was to Windows 10. There's always this question: upgrade or migrate? Let's explain the difference. Okay, upgrade is that I've got an operating system here already on my computer. Let's say it's Windows 8.1, and I want to keep all my files that's on there, keep all my settings on there, keep all my programs on there, and just change the operating system to Windows 10. And that's what's called an in-place upgrade. A migration is where I keep this computer, I back up the files, I get either another computer, I install the Windows 10 on there, and then I restore the backup from this computer to that new computer. Okay, you can see that one is a little bit straightforward, isn't it? Upgrade is pretty straightforward. You install it, you keep everything, it's there. Whereas a migrate, it's a lot more work because you're installing the operating system, you're installing the apps, then you're restoring the backup. But which is better? Well, in my opinion, migrate's always better. Because if you're upgrading, you're not only keeping all the file settings and programs, you're keeping all the problems as well. Okay, if you think about your computer, and I know with my computer, when you first install it, it's beautiful, perfect, runs smoothly, and yeah, very efficient, all that kind of stuff. But over the course of a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, you have this what I call accumulated junk. Spyware, viruses, misconfiguration, half uninstalled files. You know what I mean? Especially if you're not familiar with using a computer, you're just a typical user. I like to think of my mother. Okay, how would she uninstall a program? Probably just delete the files, right? Or something like that. So is that actually uninstalling properly? No. So all that problems, which is on the original machine, is going to be carried over to the new machine. Okay. So if it's something like viruses, spyware, definitely that's not something I want to even think about. So I just get a new machine, back up the files and settings, and restore it here. Everything else is fresh. You get me? So my preference is always to migrate. So here's some pros and cons. So in-place upgrade retains user settings, application settings, and files, preserves installed applications, does not require additional storage space for migration files, affects user productivity very minimally because it's just whatever time it takes to do the upgrade. Provides simpler setup process, and you have an ability to roll back if there's a problem halfway through. Disadvantage of upgrade. Cannot start with a standardized reference configuration, so it's all you can't just deploy an image. Preserve applications may not work correctly after upgrading because what if it's not compatible? Remnant file settings contribute to performance and security issues. That's what I was talking about with the problems carried over. Do not allow for edition changes. So if you've got this edition, you go to this same edition if you're doing an upgrade. Okay, you can't upgrade from home to enterprise, for example. Okay, is only available on supported operating systems. Computers must meet the minimum hardware requirements. Whereas migration offers the opportunity to clean up existing computer and creates more stable and secure desktop environment, allows for installation of any edition regardless of previous version because it's not dependent on that, it's not upgrading that, it's just moving your files to a new one. Provides opportunity to reconfigure hardware level settings before installation. Malicious software does not migrate with the new system. Some disadvantages, it requires you to do a lot more work. It requires you to use a tool called USMT, User State Migration Tool, to migrate your settings and files. Requires reinstallation of application, requires storage space for temporarily storing that migration settings. May impact productivity because it will take longer. But to be honest, more work and taking a little bit longer is always preferred over if you get a better, secure, efficient computer. And you know what, with migration, you can start off with a pre-configured image that I deploy to 1,000 computers, and then I just migrate their settings afterwards. Process of upgrading Windows 10. So if you are going to do upgrade, evaluate. Can I upgrade? Can I upgrade to the right version? Will my programs work? Back up your files, do the upgrade, verify that everything's functional, and then update to the latest updates. Process of migration. Backup, always backup. You notice that that's always a big thing. Backup data. The data is the most important thing on any computer. The operating system, the hardware, nothing money can't fix. The data, sometimes money can't actually replace data. So backup, install, then we actually install the programs, restore the backup, and then you're way to go. So if you're migrating the user state, you need to use the USMT, User State Migration Tool. This can be done. This has to be done through a command prompt, unfortunately. Some people hate it because it's a command prompt, but it's unfortunately one of those things that if you're going to be IT administrator, you just have to get used to it. You know what I mean? Like if you're a typical average user like my mother, no problem. You use the nice graphical user interface and let someone else handle the hard part. But if you're going to be that person that's going to handle the hard task of managing a network, then you need to get used to PowerShell. You need to get used to some command prompt. Okay? So here's an example of the commands. But we'll do this as part of a worksheet down the track, so you'll have a chance. What about activation? So we all know that Microsoft likes to get their money, don't they? So we all know Microsoft, you have to register, you have serial numbers, you have to then activate. If you don't activate, your computer will stop working and won't get updates. It's fair enough. Someone had to work really hard to get those operating systems written, so they need to get paid. Okay, so what about activation? We all know from our own experiences that if I have a computer at home, I just put it on the internet and it activates itself, doesn't it? That's fine, but what about if you run the network here at TAFE with literally thousands of computers? Do you want every one of those computers to go on the internet and activate? Do you want 2,000 different keys to administer? Probably not. Okay. So basically, activation establishes a relationship between the product key and the installation, assures software integrity, provides full updates and support, and license compliance. If hardware changes, reactivation is required. There's three main methods of activation: retail, OEM, and Microsoft Volume Licensing activation. So that's what we would use here. One key, and we activate all of these computers. With the volume licensing activation, there's three methods. There's actually MAC, multiple activation key, which is one key that can be activated over the internet many times. There's KMS, which means we need a special server on the network, which is called a key management server. So instead of activating to the internet, to Microsoft, we activate to our KMS server, which then sends data to Microsoft. And there's also Active Directory-based activation where we require a Windows Active Directory domain. And if you're studying the 4ICW subject, you'll learn about Active Directory next term. But the whole point of this volume activation is that you don't have to worry about individual computers and individual keys. You do it with one key, and you can put in as part of an image, and when they turn on, they'll activate. How does Active Directory ADDS, Active Directory Domain Services, work? So basically, users are members of the domain, their computers are member of the domain, and when their computer are a member of the domain, they have a new Windows installed, they will be activated against our Active Directory, which will actually then authenticate that computer, check that it's got a license capacity for this computer, and then either gives it a tick or no as far as activation goes. How does KMS activation works? Like I said, let's look at the picture instead of the writing. We have a server called a KMS server. It basically is the activation server on the network. Instead of every computer activating to the internet to Microsoft, it activates to this KMS server. This KMS server has a record of all the licenses that's been used, and then it sends that information to Microsoft. So it's a bit like, instead of 1,000 computers going onto the internet, it's really just this KMS that's communicating with Microsoft over the internet. Saves your internet bandwidth, increases security by not letting your computers communicate with the internet directly. Here's a little bit more. It talks about the port that needs to be open and so forth. And basically, as far as we need to know, it just basically means a easier way for us to bulk activate our computers. So volume activation management, so VAMT, allows you to manage activation of supported Microsoft products centrally. So basically, if we've got 250 licenses for Windows 10 and 200 licenses of Office, another 10 licenses of Microsoft Project, we just put all of that in our activation management service. And basically, whereas computers come online with these products, they're activating, they're using up the licenses, and we can actually have a quick report on how many have we got remaining, how many used, and so forth. It allows us to make sure that we are licensed and we are abiding by the license agreement. Volume activation service role can be done in three ways. It can be the Active Directory-based activation, key management system, or volume activation tool console snap-in. There's also the subscription model. Okay, enterprise subscription plans are available with release of Windows 10 anniversary update. So what is subscription? You probably heard of this term subscription before. It's like Netflix. You pay a fee, you get to use Netflix for a period of time. Once that period of time finishes, you pay again and again and again, and it will last forever. Okay? But if you decide not to renew your subscription, as in, oh, I'm sick of Netflix, I'm not going to renew next month, I lose access to Netflix, don't I? Same thing with Windows 10. If you buy on a subscription model, which is similar to how you buy Office 365, I pay for a year or a month, and I get to use it for a year or a month. I stop wanting it. Once the period elapses, it stops working. Okay, so designed for small and medium-sized organizations without an enterprise agreement, Windows 10 Enterprise E3 and Windows 10 Enterprise E5 subscriptions. The Windows 10 Pro Anniversary update seamlessly upgrades to Windows 10 Enterprise, and Windows 10 E5 subscribes includes Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, and it's also part of the Secure Productive Enterprise offering. So basically, think of pay-as-you-go, okay? Just like Office 365, pay-as-you-go, software as a service. In this case, software as a service, but it happens to be the operating system. So I know we've taken a little bit longer than what we planned to do, and really, I think we're going to run out a bit of time to finish this off. So there's a worksheet, okay? So you'll see there's a worksheet. So we're finished with the theory part of it. The usual formula for my subjects is that we go through a theory that explains a few things, and then we do a worksheet where we teach you a few things practically and reconfirm some of the things we learned. So if you look at this work,